Labor Talks was John DeRozier, recorded at Chippewa Valley Community Television in Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Good day, this is Labor Talks. Our guest today is Corey Grotte, President of Local 728, National Association of Letter Carriers. Corey, I hope I pronounced your last name correctly.
You came close that time. Karate.
Karate. I'm sorry. Please don't practice your karate on me, okay? Now, welcome to Labor Talks. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And what do you want to start with?
The Postal Service itself has been having some challenges, but they're really not the biggest challenges that most people see. Financially, the Postal Service is doing very well. Most of the challenges we have are facing Congress. So it's good to get that out there. That's what I have. What do you have for me?
Okay. Now, we've been told by various parties that the postal system is running out of money. We've even been told that the Postal Service is being funded by the tax dollar. First of all, is the Postal Service running out of money, and is it funded strictly by the tax dollar?
The first question, the Postal Service is not running out of money. The Postal Service in the past 2 quarters, the fiscal year of 2014, has made a profit of $688 million. So when they're saying that we lost money, that is not true. The second part to your question, are we funded by the taxpayers? Absolutely not. We accept zero money from the federal government. The U.S. Postal Service is self-funded and self-ran, but we're government-owned.
Okay. So you're really funded when people buy stamps. That's where your money comes from, right?
The purchase of stamps and the postage from the parcels.
Is it safe to say, and this is an obvious question, I have to ask it, is this revenue shortage real or is it manufactured?
I could say it's manufactured. The profits are operational costs. That's actually the profits that we've brought in for operational. What I'll say is manufactured is our Postmaster General talking about the total savings are because of closing processing plants and consolidating carrier work with other work, different things of that sort. That's the part that's manufactured. But the overall profits themselves, that's a real number, $688 million the past 2 quarters.
Now, I noticed a couple, 3 weeks ago that you people were having, that the postal workers were having a visibility out on the street.
Yes.
Now, I don't like the way I phrased it, but that's where you were.
Yeah.
What message were you trying to communicate to the public?
At that time, we did hold a national day of action. That was on November 14th. The message we were trying to get to the general public is closing processing plants would slow America's mail. It would push away revenue. It would slow down your letters from one neighbor to the next. Could take possibly 2 days. Prescription drugs would be delayed. Newspapers, you could get today's news tomorrow. And so by closing these processing plants, it will slow service. And by slowing service, it will drive more customers away. There is absolutely no need to close processing plants or swap from 6-day delivery to 5-day delivery. Everything that we do is for the American people.
Now, I have a follow-up question. If these shortages continue, revenue shortages, alleged revenue shortages, will we be looking at more postal centers being closed?
Absolutely. One of the things that they're trying to do right now is there's scheduled for processing plants to be closed starting in February. And if they close the processing plants, they could see a shortage in revenue. And I will say that because of what I just said. If we slow mail down to the American people, they could go to our competitors.
Okay. Now, given all that's happening and could happen, are we in danger of losing postal workers? And if so, will new people be hired to take their place?
If the processing plants close, yes, those people will have to go somewhere. And if they're going to other places, or if they're downsizing through attrition, people retiring, for instance, they would like the new, younger workforce. It's the way, you know. So there is, yes.
And when you bring in newer, younger people, it takes them a while to learn the service, doesn't it?
That's correct.
And that means
Slower service. But eventually, well, fortunately, our workforce, the newer workforce coming in, are geared toward career employees. They're not strictly a casual workforce. They are part-time, they are flexible, but they are geared and steered toward a career position.
Now, obviously, I have a lot of respect for our letter carriers. If I didn't, you wouldn't be sitting here, okay? But one of the reasons I have a lot of respect for you, just one of the reasons, is because you have various hazards. Barking dogs, ice. Want to comment about that?
Well, the letter carriers of the National Association of Letter Carriers have been faced with the same hazards that they have for over the past 200 years. And in a couple of examples that you just said were aggressive dogs, icy sidewalks, snow, extreme cold temperatures, extreme heat. These are the same hazards that we face on a daily basis. But as employees of the U.S. Postal Service, we strive to provide that service to the American people regardless of those conditions.
If you were bitten by a dog, we don't want that to happen, but if it did happen, what could you do? What recourse would you have?
Well, the homeowners are responsible for their dogs. In some counties, including Eau Claire County, there's the leash law. You know, you have to keep your dog on a leash or in the fenced area. If we are bitten and the bite is extreme, your homeowner's insurance could cover the medical cost or lost time, things of that sort. Most dog bites don't result in any longer than 3 days of lost time. So.
To be honest with you, if I were bitten by a dog, or if I fell and hurt myself because of an icy sidewalk, I would sue. Point blank, I just would. Do you have that?
We really don't have that option unless it's to the extreme. We do have the right to not serve one house or one parking because of a hazardous condition. If that comes up, we notify our supervisors and postmasters, and they go out and inspect, and we could delay their mail or put their mail on hold until that customer complies with that hazard.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to add? Is there anything I've forgotten to ask?
Well, like I said, you know, over the past 200 years, letter carriers have been doing this, and we strive to provide service to the American people the best that we can. We are the best form of communication from one household to another, and the letter mail is still the most public serve of communication there is. It is personal. It's hard to put a greeting card on the refrigerator. Some of the strongest things that we have fought for as a union coming up, you will be seeing in this video. And there's a short video to here that I'd like for you guys to see. It's all the hazards and the problems that the union has fought and come forward with from the past 35 years.
Well, that's about it for today, folks. I want to thank Corey Grotte again. Did I get it correctly?
Grotte.
Grotte.
We're getting closer and closer.
Thank you for being here. Now, Corey, you did bring a video for the audience to watch. And I can guarantee you that the video is a lot more exciting than the questions I've asked. Corey, would you care to introduce and describe the video just a tad?
The video that you're getting ready to see is about the Great Strike of 1970. It's what the union has fought for. We battled Congress, we went on strike, And in the video you'll actually see that the National Guard was brought in to deliver the mail. There's some very interesting points, especially about the pay, the health benefits, and workers' comp issues that were brought in by this video. I hope you enjoy the video. It's very exciting, and we're facing some of those same problems today.
And that's it?
That's all I have, John.
I'd also like to thank the audience, of course, because without the audience, we don't have a program. And today I want to thank you, Corey, because obviously, if you weren't here, I'd be talking to myself, and I'd be twice as boring. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I hereby call the 47th Biennial Convention of the National Association of Letter Carriers to order. Color guards, post colors.
The National Association of Letter Carriers assembles biannually for the purpose of declaring specific mandates and objectives which hopefully can be accomplished in the next 2 years. More than 3,200 delegates registered for the 47th Biennial Convention of the National Association of Letter Carriers. As delegates received copies of the many committee reports and other important matters to come before the convention, the serious business about to be undertaken was already evident.
We're not going to dwell on history at this convention. We're going to explore the future. I want to discuss with you today our prospects for the years to come. Years which will be just as exciting and as important as the past 2 years have been, but I hope not quite as turbulent. Let's not talk so much about where we've been. Let's talk instead of where we're going. Last March, the power of the Union was unleashed, and it was unleashed in a very surprising way, and it made believers out of everyone, including the American people, because of many reasons which I have discussed with you. I did not unleash that power myself, but I want here and now to pay tribute to those letter carriers who did break through the dam of repression and took their grievances and frustrations out into the streets for the world to see. It took golden guts to do that, and I want here and now to express admiration for those guts. Both groups, the actual strikers, the potential strikers, put enormous pressures on the representatives of management at the bargaining table. If there had not been such pressure, there wouldn't have been any bargaining table at all, and any negotiations that would have been attempted would have been a failure. So I congratulate all of you who were responsible for that trade event. Despite the exotic surroundings in which we convene, we shall not forget that this is a working convention. We have an enormous job to do. There are innumerable changes which we must make in our Constitution if we're going to exist as a union under the laws of this land. We must make decisions here which will determine the policies of the NALC for many years to come. Some management types have chosen to consider the job action of last March as a one-time thing. They have taken the attitude that the boys have had their fun and will never be troublesome again. It may be necessary in the future to disabuse them of this notion. I hope not. I sincerely hope not. But I want you to keep those pledges of support that you have sent active and in readiness. As long as I am president of the NALC, I intend to fight for decent treatment of my members. I intend to use every weapon in the entire arsenal of industrial warfare. And if we are faced with stupid stubbornness at the bargaining table of the future, I am putting management on notice here and now that I shall not fear to employ that entire arsenal.
President James H. Rademacher's address to the convention was enthusiastically received.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The business of the convention got underway with action on the resolutions presented by the Resolutions Committee. One of the lighter moments took place when a motion was made from the floor demanding that national officers remove their coats and ties and henceforth appear in more informal attire for the rest of the convention. The proposal was unanimously adopted and the officers complied.
Now that's as far as we go.
Mike number 7, please.
When we're talking about a craft of United Federation of Postal Clerks, an admirable group perhaps, but who are indeed on the down...
Expressions of the delegates to the 1970 convention were indicative of the new trade union thinking which has occurred in the ranks of the NALC. A distinctive new philosophy developed at this convention.
Those opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the recommendation of the committee. What is the AFL-CIO doing for letter carriers? Mr. Meany sent a letter to...
Because of the involvement of the AFL-CIO in the legislative campaigns, including activities which commenced with the postal strike, the delegates expressed themselves on the leadership of the labor movement and affiliation with it. An example was the exchange of views concerning AFL-CIO President George Meany.
Efforts should acknowledge the need to extend the present policy of the federal government.
One of the chief concerns of the NALC today is the cost of living allowance differential in various areas. A resolution calling for extensions of the cost of living allowance into those areas where statistics indicate it is so needed was quickly adopted by the delegates, who felt that COLA would be more appropriate than an area wage.
The nay vote on this ballot will now stand to be...
Generally, the vote on resolutions and constitutional amendments was by wide margin, with the chair being able to detect the ayes and nays. However, in a few instances, it was necessary for a standing vote, and even this division required a teller count, and the tabulated report was made to the convention. Enactment of the postal reform legislation has placed all postal workers under the provisions of the Taft-Hartley and Landrum-Griffin Acts.
Your approval or your questions...
It was therefore necessary at this convention to act upon constitutional amendments which would cause the NALC Constitution to conform to these laws, and amendments involving election and voting procedures, as well as establishment of other safeguards for rank-and-file members.
Now the question comes on the recommendation...
Considerable discussion took place on proposed amendments which would affect the methods by which national officers are elected, including proxy voting and election of officers by regions. Delegates overwhelmingly approved continuation of the present system, now accompanied by new safeguards.
Proceed with Amendment U.
The name of James H. Rademacher has been placed in nomination for the presidency of the NALC. Are there further nominations? At microphone number 3.
I nominate...
Nominations were made from the floor for national officers. President Rademacher and Vice President Lewis were nominated, as were other candidates for these offices. Election results were announced, and all resident national officers were overwhelmingly re-elected, and other positions were filled with a total vote cast of more than 12,000.
President James H. Rademacher, Vice President J. Stanley Lewis.
The newly elected officers assembled on the podium for the installation ceremonies, conducted by immediate past President Jerome J. Keating and President Emeritus William C. Doherty. As each officer's name was called, he was presented with the traditional Hawaiian lei.
On my honor as a man, that I will faithfully observe the laws of the National Association of Letter Carriers and all of the laws of the state and branch associations. President James H. Rademacher, please take your gavel. Norman Vincent Peale said, change your thoughts and you change your world. And your president is no different than any delegate in this hall. He has changed his thoughts as you have, and we're changing our world, and that's my acceptance speech to this convention.
A point of personal privilege, Mr. Chairman.
Proceed.
Let them be presented and let the record shown that our two other...
In answer to a delegate's question as to why the traditional lei was not presented to Bill Doherty, President Rademacher made this presentation.
So order.
Well, the record will so indicate and I hope that they will be.
Mic number 7, please, Mr.
Just a
President.
moment.
Number
I am
7.
going to present one to Brother Doherty, and I'll even kiss him for what he said about me.
Keynote speaker was Assistant Secretary of Labor W.J. Ussery, Jr., who told the delegates that the public was overwhelmingly in support of them during the March postal crisis. Montana Congressman Arnold Olson was welcomed enthusiastically by the delegates, and President Rademacher made it clear why.
What this man here has done was to prevent a nationwide strike again in April because of the assurance he gave us. And not only that, but because of this man, there will be $150 million in back pay paid to the people who work in the post office department. Let's go. Hip, hip. Hooray! Hip, hip. Hooray! Hip, hip. Hooray!
The muscular dystrophy poster child from Hawaii thanked the delegates and the NALC president for their support of the MDA program. But after the working sessions, there were moments of relaxation and enjoyment. On 2 evenings, more than 6,000 delegates and their families gathered to enjoy the traditional Hawaiian luau. And the grand ball, also traditional at every convention, this time took place on the edge of the Pacific Ocean, with the delegates dancing in the informal attire of the islands. One of the highlights unique to NALC conventions is the parade. Most delegates are in costume, and their appearance in convention cities is always a welcome sight.
And I have to ask this question.
After 5 days of hard work, the convention was adjourned by President Rademacher.
I hereby declare this meeting adjourned, sine die, to meet again in New Orleans, Louisiana, 2 years hence. Now everybody, let's go. Well, there's no question that even though we're in this beautiful island, Lowland here, that they still were determined that it was going to be a working convention, and no delegations at any of our conventions since 1889 have ever passed so many meaningful resolutions. And most important of all, this convention has completely revised our Constitution, which can now be labeled a true trade union constitution for the first time.
Right. No question about it. Well, it'll be very interesting the next 2 years, I'm sure. We're running into new experiences that we wouldn't even dreamed about 2 years ago or 4 years ago.
Well, I could be wrong, but I think this is the first time in my memory of 20 years coming to national conventions that we completed all of the resolutions of every committee. I can't recall doing that before, and going through the whole book.
Yes, they acted upon every resolution, and I might say, if you hadn't counted them lately, there were over 600 resolutions addressed to this convention in one way or another before one committee or another, plus over 110 amendments. So they had to be a working convention, or we never would have gotten done.
That's correct.
The National Association of Letter Carriers is definitely now in the same ballpark with the big league other unions. And they have gotten there by themselves through the actions that they have taken, and not only through the concerted action that was taken during the spring, but the action here. And the action taken here was even greater than the action that was taken last spring, because it has solidified us. And as we now go to that bargaining table, where we have now become true negotiators rather than lobbyists, we need that kind of support that was displayed here. And it's very wholesome, and it's going to be extremely helpful to the officers of the NALC to have that kind of backup support, so that management at that bargaining table knows that every one of our more than 200,000 members stands solidly behind the negotiators for the NALC. That's the way they want it, and that's the way we want it, and that's the way it's going to be.
Oh, please remember me. When you return
Aloha, and God bless all of you.
Chippewa Valley Community Television is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067 or on the web at www.cbctv.org.